it's time to talk about Finnish identity, and I've been thinking about this because when you hear from people who are born and live in Finland, and we say here, being born in America, that we're Finnish because we were born to that identity. My parents were both Finnish. My kids have obviously half to a little more than half Finnish DNA, depending on how the DNA is dispersed. My daughter has 50 plus, 55%, something like that. My wife has 0. So she got extra DNA from me, from the Finnish portion of the two of us. But the Finnish people, they like to say, oh, you're an American, you're not Finnish. But I was born to parents who spoke Finnish in the house every day. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and we go to Monaga, Minnesota for the midsummer celebration, and you walk down the street and you hear Finnish more than you hear English. And even though we could not speak Finnish, we the children, this generation, that we were probably the 4th generation, I suppose, 3rd, depending on which grandparents you're talking about, that 4th, 3rd, 4th generation coming over from Finland. And the Finnish people say, you're not Finnish. But we say, look, you got to understand America. America, we're Americans because we're born here, so we're naturally born, which means that we are Americans from birth, and people are naturalized who are like Americans born overseas. They're naturalized to become like as if they were born here. Even though like they may have been born on an army base somewhere across the ocean. Like my wife, born in Frankfurt, Germany, she had to be naturalized when she was 15 to be a citizen. I don't know if it's to be a citizen or just to be naturally born, to be considered naturally born. Barack Obama was born in Kenya, but he was treated as if he was born on United States soil, and he became the president, which is totally legit. But Finnish people, they like to say, you're not Finnish because you weren't born in Finland. And yet we grew up around all of these Finnish speakers, singing Finnish songs, making Finnish recipes, going to Finnish saunas, and it's not sauna. People like to say sauna because in English, the AU in a word makes it the ah sound. But listen, when you say sauna, it's sa-u-na. S-A is sa, the U is u, and then na, sauna, or sauna, if you say it quick. And that's the way I take it, sauna. And a lot of Finnish words are like that. They're hard to pronounce. That's why we ended up not speaking more than a few words of Finnish or Finglish. We call it Finglish, which is like part English, part Finnish. So, like, we had missionaries come to our church, and I think he was American, and she was from Finland, but they lived in Germany. And I was talking to her about our Finnish art, so I says, they call me Bryantty. What does that mean? Why do they do that? Oh, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it just means like little Brian. So if I call my Uncle Martin Martini, he would laugh because he knew it meant like Little Martin. And he would call Dad Harold because he was his little brother. And I think that throwing that little cute ending on it, it doesn't mean anything. So then I asked, what does our name mean? Juntunen. Juntunen. And there are a lot of Juntunens around Duluth. There are a lot of Juntunens in Finland. And on the internet, you can find a lot of Juntunens. And I said, what does that mean? I asked the lady. And she goes, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Well, when I look it up, and after all these years and getting a hint from my cousin Cheryl, Juntu is like a form of John. And the Nen is like when we say her name is Sandy Nee Williams. Let's just make up a name. Meaning that her birth name is Williams. She's the daughter of Williams, whatever the case. The Nen just means from the family of, or from the house of, I think more accurately, because the houses were named. There were no surnames. The houses had a name. And back when Periscope was still in business, I used to talk to people in Finland, and they got to know who I was, because I'd go find them, and they were sitting around. Young people, they were drinking. There were like cans of alcohol like laying on the tables, and they didn't even like take care of them. They just like left them laying there while they grabbed another can or a bottle and drank it. They were heavy drinkers. And I would ask them, what is the name of your house? Because they still name the house, even though now they have to have a surname. So what happened is whatever the name of your house was, which there were a bunch of houses named Juntunen, the house of Juntu, the house of John. And maybe it was a John who built the house originally, whatever the case. But there were a lot of people named Juntunen, and what they did is when surnames became legal and they had to start recording them at the church, the Lutheran church, they would record them and they'd become their legal name. A lot of people registered as people who lived in the house of Juntu, so they were Juntunens. They were from the family or from the house of Juntu, from John. The closest translation to Juntunen in English is Johnson. And I didn't believe that when I first heard it from my cousin, but now that I've looked at it, I says, she's absolutely right. Cheryl was absolutely right that the name is closer to Johnson in translation than anything. So I feel I've got a last Finnish surname that came from a house in Finland somewhere. I can't tell you where it came from. My mom's was Hilden, but it came from the name Hiltunen. It was just Americanized or anglicized to make it sound easier. So they changed it to Hilden, Hilden, and cut off the Tunen. So it's Hiltunen. And they had come from the house of Hiltu, whoever that was. So anyway, I'm getting close to my house, turning onto my street here. And so this diatribe is over. But for the people in Finland who think that they own the Finnish heritage, understand this about America. Italian Americans consider themselves to be Italians. Latino Americans consider themselves to be Latino. Spanish Americans, Puerto Ricans they have a Puerto Rican fest. They consider themselves to be Puerto Ricans, even though they are Americans, but they live in a territory of America. So they're Puerto Ricans. Everybody who comes here still holds on to the identity of their former, family. Unless if they just become, there's so many, so much mixture that they can't really hone in on, like the biggest one. Mine is 100% Finnish, and I would call my kids Finnish too. But they like to consider themselves Irish, especially on St. Patrick's Day. And they're Irish, they're German. Oh, I don't know. Whatever the case. So that's the end of my diatribe, you people who live in Finland. And by the way, I'm thinking about putting a sauna in my backyard. Bye.